How do you become a better teacher? Beg, borrow, and steal. Watch your colleagues, go to veteran teachers, ask them what works for them. Really, veteran teachers on your campus are the best source of information and support that you can possibly have. They have the same students as you. They work in the same school under the same policies as you. They know what works. And finding out from them and using them as a resource is the #1 way to become a better teacher. Let them help you. Ask for support. Also, videotape yourself or have your trusted veteran colleague come in and observe you teach and give you feedback on what is happening. Using videotape if somebody can't come into your classroom is really excellent, not only because you can sit and watch that video together and then go over what you thought went well and what didn't, and they can give you advice, but also if you don't know anybody on the campus, you don't have a trusted colleague yet, you can look at that video and you will see things that you did not notice while you were in your class distracted by your 35 students. If I was to do just one thing to help a teacher improve, it would be videotape them and go over the video with them so that we could get right to the heart of what is the #1 thing that would help in that classroom, in that situation, with that person. How to deal with late or tardy students. There's two different things here. One might be a student who's just tardy on a particular day and you want to know how to kind of reintegrate them back into the class, and the other is for the student who is chronically tardy. For the student, the single student who is just tardy on a particular day, have a procedure in place for students that they know to follow when they come into the room tardy. Should they come up to you with a slip, a tardy slip? Is there a place in the classroom where they should just place that tardy slip? Should they move silently to their seat and wait for you to approach them about the tardy? Whatever your system is or whatever you most want from them, set it up as a procedure. Explain it to the students, and the first time a student is tardy and comes up to you in the middle of your lesson or during the warm-up activity, that's the time to take a step back, take a pause and say, let me explain to you, class, how you should behave if you come into the class late. You should come in, drop your tardy slip here in the box, pick up a warm-up activity, and sit down at your table and begin. As long as it's clear and it's practiced and it's reinforced, it'll work with students. If you're talking about a student who's chronically tardy, who is tardy multiple days in a row every week, that's when you start, when you're at 3 or 4 tardies, you start with a one-on-one conversation with the student about why they're tardy. At the elementary level, this is really out of their control if it's the beginning of the day and they're tardy. They're being brought to school by their parents, and that's an issue to discuss with the parents. At the secondary level, that could in fact be the student who is just not coming to class on time, and it is their responsibility. So you have a one-on-one conversation. What is in the way of you getting here on time? What is happening between your first period class and this class that you can't get here? Or whatever the situation is, start with that personal one-on-one conversation and see if it can be taken care of in that way. If it cannot, the next step is a call home. You want to reach out to the parents, you want to find out what's happening, whether they know that the student has been tardy, and what information they might have for you related to the student's behavior in coming in chronically tardy. When you're talking about 6, 7, 8 tardies in a row in a very short period of time, and you've called the parents and you've talked with the student and it's still going on, now's the time to bring in the administration. Now's the time to have a meeting with the student and administrator and yourself, possibly other teachers who are also experiencing chronic tardies from this student, the parents, maybe even the counselors, to get involved in figuring out what is going on there and what needs to happen to get the student to class on time. So those are some ideas about dealing with tardies in the classroom. Best classroom management rules. The best kinds of rules for the classroom and for classroom management will be very specific and observable. You want rules like be seated when the second bell rings, or don't talk while others are talking. Things that are specific and observable, because when they are that specific and observable, it's easy for the kids to understand when they're breaking the rule and when they are not. When we have rules that are more vague or more big picture, like be respectful, right? Be prepared. Those are great principles, those are great overarching concepts to shoot for, but what does be respectful look like? What does be prepared look like? Right? You can certainly start with a bigger picture idea like that, and then work your way down into the specific observable things you want to see from kids. Generally, you want to see 5 or fewer rules. Not that you only have 5 rules in your classroom, but when you're going over them with kids, you're putting them up on the wall, you want to keep it to something manageable, something understandable, something observable and practicable. Don't talk while others are talking. Don't use racial slurs or inappropriate language or put-downs in the classroom. Come with your materials every day. These kinds of things kids can understand. It's easy for us to see when they're breaking it and to show them how they're breaking it. Much easier than if we're saying, you're being disrespectful and you're breaking the rule of be respectful. Those are a few ideas to get you started with making rules with your class. How to stay calm when you're angry with a student? That's a really good question. How do you stay calm? The first thing is assume the best about the student. You might be angry with that student because they're displaying some kind of chronic negative behavior, or the behavior that they're displaying seems disrespectful or defiant to you. But let's assume the best. The student wants to be appropriate. They want your help to get there, and their misbehavior that's causing your anger is just their way of asking for more help or more clarity about what they need to do and how they need to do it. They're fishing for who you're going to be together in the classroom, what your relationship is going to be. But on this particular day, you're angry. And so controlling that anger is tricky because you can't control when anger happens for you. It just comes up and it's there. But what you can control is what you do with that anger once it comes up for you. Teachers either walk down the path generally of reactivity with anger or rational response with anger. Reactivity is, I got angry, I'm done with you, and I lash out at you, and toxifying the environment for everybody. And I might win that battle, right? I'm angry at you, you're wandering around the classroom, I might get you to sit down. But I've lost the war because I'm eroding safety for you and for the rest of the class when I express that anger out back onto the class or onto a student. What I could do instead is a rational response. Assume the best about the student. They want to be appropriate and they want my help to get there. This is something we call the technique because it starts with 3 R's. And the first R is recognize. Recognize that you're angry. Because oftentimes when we lash out at our students when we're angry, it's because we don't realize that we're angry until we're already over the line. We're like seething, 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 and lash out at the student. So if we can recognize, if we can be consciously aware that we're angry in that moment, then that will help us choose a more reasonable response, even though we might be angry in that moment. Now this is a very quick, hello anger, have a cup of tea, not a 7-course meal. We're like wallowing in that anger. We're just trying to recognize that it is so that we can have a more productive response. The second R in the technique is reorient yourself. Really quickly, assume the best about that student. And that might be just quickly in your head saying, this student wants to do better and wants my help to get there. Just reorient your way towards them in a more compassionate, positive light. And then do something really quick to calm down. For me, I'll take a big, deep breath, and then I'll speak to the student, because that helps me calm down right before I speak to them. If counting up or down from 5 works for you, that's great too. Whatever works for you that's super fast, though, that you can calm down right before you speak to them. And then when you speak to them, use tone, volume, and posture. What that means is use a calm but serious tone of voice, lower the volume of your voice, and square your posture to the student when you're speaking to them. Tone, volume, and posture helps us maintain safety and structure. And while I still might be angry internally, I won't be expressing that or lashing that out onto my student while I'm speaking to them, because I will be calm, I will have a low volume, and I will have a serious square posture to them, while also assuming the best and staying calm in my body with a deep breath or counting down from 5. That's one way to deal with your own feelings of anger in the classroom. There are a lot of different ways to build positive connections with students, but some simple ideas are things like greeting them at the door. When we greet our students at the door so that we make eye contact with them and make some little personal connection with them every day when they walk in the room, the whole class is a little bit more at ease, feels a little bit more welcomed into the room. One of the strategies that you can try for this is called the 4H strategy. So you meet your students at the door, and they have to give you one of 4 H's before they're allowed to enter the classroom. And the 4 H's are a hello, a high five, a handshake, or a hug. At the secondary level, when we're talking about middle or high school, that's called the 3H strategy, because I'm sure, as you can guess, we drop the hug, because that can get weird and inappropriate. But even at the secondary level, greeting the students at the door, and maybe not every period, but just in that one period that you're having trouble connecting with, can really soften the way that they relate to you and how welcome they feel when they come into the room. You also end up finding out some really interesting things. You can see right away who's coming into the room with a chip on their shoulder or bringing baggage in from something else that has already happened earlier that day or the night before, and so you can try and head that off at the pass, because at least you know it's happening right when they come in by how they say hello to you. Another thing that you can do to positively connect with a class is to share some information about yourself. Students want to know about us, and they sometimes perceive us as being these kind of automaton, robotic beings who live, eat, breathe, and sleep at the school. I was teaching at a high school once that was very close to where I live, and I was in the grocery store shopping with my son in the basket, my infant son in the basket, and 2 of my students walked by me and did kind of a double take as they walked by. And one of them said, "Mrs. Dearborn?" And I said, "Oh, hello, how are you?" And they're like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm grocery shopping." And the kid was like, "What? I don't understand." Right? Because they had no perception of me outside of the classroom. I was just this person who lived at the school and told them what to do in the classroom. Now, after they got over the shock, they saw my son. "Oh, this is your, are you married? Do you have other children?" Like, they wanted to know everything about me. The next day, I went into that class, and they, of course, had told everybody else in that class, and then everybody wanted to know every single thing about me. "When did you get married? How did your husband propose? What did you wear? Do you have other children? What are their names? What do they look like? Do you have pictures?" But that class softened towards me after that, because they felt more connected to me on a human level and felt less of the "I'm up here and they're down here." Not that that isn't also true, right? I'm not there to be their friend. I'm there to be their teacher and to support them and to be their mentor, but still the relationship softened in a way that was good for me and good for them in the classroom. So sometimes sharing a little bit of personal information can help positively connect with an entire class. Another way to connect with your entire class is to bring humor or laughter or levity in some way into your classroom. This might be joke time where you tell them jokes or they tell you jokes, but they have to be appropriate, and you got to set a structure up around that so that you don't get inappropriate jokes. But bringing that into the classroom will again help soften how they feel towards you and the way they relate to you and to the class. Those are some ideas for positively connecting with a class.